What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now. I'm Alex. In this video, I want to take a look at a couple Take-Two properties. They did their investor call yesterday, and, kind of just straightforward with GTA 6. Not a lot to report, and that's a good thing, right? The date's still in line. They did talk about this kind of variable pricing and what they were asked, really, right? Like, what could the pricing be to those that are afraid of it being, $80, $90, $100? I think their quote was specifically that they're going to make it fair. Whatever the price was going to be, it was going to be fair. And that can get a little messy because, look, I've talked about it before with GTA. Like, this is a game you can get away with it, right? Like, when we talk about the prices going up and there's all these different discussions online, one game that really could get away with robbery, with, charging quite literally $100, I would argue, for a standard edition version of GTA 6. If there's any game that could get away with it, it would be GTA 6. Now, would it destroy the industry? I think it would, because everybody then would say, oh my God, look, they did it, not knowing that, okay, well, obviously that's a special case, right? Like, people are willing to spend a little bit more on GTA than any other game. But no, I mean, all jokes aside, I feel like this will be at least an $80 game. I really can't imagine it won't be. And you could also say it's fair if you're them, right? You could charge $80 and say, look, this game has 100 hours of content. This is going to define the next generation of games. It's fair that it's $80. And in that way, it's a little hard to argue. But, again, it goes with this pricing stuff that we're always talking about. So I'm sure we'll continue to talk about that with GTA. But I want to talk about Bioshock and I want to talk about Judas. So I saw this Bioshock quote first, and it actually got me to think, oh, was he asked about Judas or did he say anything about Judas? So I'll get to that in a second. But let's read this Bioshock one first. So he was asked about it specifically if it was in danger of being canceled. Okay, that was a direct question. And he said, it's going to come out. That I can say hand on heart without question. And then he talks about, we don't talk about how long our development cycles are. We have some ups and downs along the way. That is accurate. And we've had changes in studio leadership. That said, we have a very big shoes to fill on Bioshock because of the legacy of Ken Levine and the legacy of what has gone before, which has been so successful. And we need to make sure that this experience is true to the Bioshock DNA on the one hand and a massive step forward on the other hand. That's always challenging. We think we're up for the challenge, but it has not been seamless. Honestly, some good quotes. And he goes on to talk about, like, the consumer is basically demanding more. Like, nowadays, consumers demand more. And I don't know if he says it here. I swear I read it somewhere where he says, like, good is the new bad, great is still great, and we're aiming for, like, excellence, or we're aiming for, like, higher than that. And that quote goes hard, to be honest with you, because it's something I feel, even with, like, review scores, right? We just got done talking about Mafia the Old Country, and it gets like a 76, right? And I call that mixed. I call that mixed because there's so many sites giving it 5s, there's sites giving it 8s, there's sites giving it 9s. They're all over the place, in terms of individual site reviews. And I just feel like nowadays, from, like, the modern audience, you look at a game that gets in the 70s, and while I've given loads of games tries that are in the 70s, I got nothing against it. Some of my favorite games of all time are probably in the 70s, to be honest with you, but I just feel as time has moved on, people look to the 70s and they say, oh, that's a mixed game, that's an okay game, that's a fine game, but it's not good. When in reality, a 75, a 78, those can be really amazing games. I just feel like the bar, and that's a separate thing, and I don't want to really get into that controversy again, but I think he's so right with, and I can't find that line, but he's so right with that line where it's just, look, expectations are higher. And that's accurate. I mean, there's more games coming out now than ever before, and they cost more money now, really, than ever before. So it's like, all right, if you want us to spend 60, 70, 80 bucks on your game, meanwhile, there's 20 other games vying for our attention, you can't be average. You gotta be really, really good. And in terms of the Bioshock thing, he's got a way with words. He always has a way of, like, I don't know, like, I believe that excellence. I believe, like, hey, they want to do this right. They're going to do it as good as they possibly can, and they know what Bioshock can be, and they're not going to settle for, again, it being in fact, I don't know if that's where the quote came from, but if you remember back with the Bioshock news of, like, last week or 2 weeks ago, he said that. He's like, this is a good game, but that's kind of it. It's just a good game. We're striving for far better than that, and so we've got to make some changes. And it's like, man, to hold people accountable for that, how often do you really see that? So I do believe believe it. I've always believed Bioshock was going to come out. It's just, when does it come out? That's a big question, but I've always believed it's going to happen. And so then we have to talk really quickly about Judas. This is actually pretty fast. So he talks about game releases coming in the next 12 months and even gloats that it's like, hey, this is some of like the best stuff in terms of like quality and quantity. This is like the most, and this is some really good stuff that I have the pleasure of saying is coming out in the next 12 months. Okay, so that's very important. Next 12 months. So he talks about it probably being our most robust release schedule ever. Obviously, Mafia the Old Country, and then he goes on to name the rest of them, right? NBA 2K26, Borderlands 4, WWE 2K Mobile, WWE 2K26, and then, of course, GTA 6. Then he says we have CSR 3 coming from Zynga, and Judas coming from Ghost Story Games, and even keeps going, Project Ethos coming from 2K. So he lists off all these games. By the way, I'm not a fan of at least half, if not more than half of those games, but that's my own personal preference. That's my own problem. But that's the big part right there, right? So he talks about the next 12 months. He gloats about it being like really, really big, and he throws Judas in. Now, it's not to, I want to get excited, and I want to lock it in, right? So like by next August, we're getting Judas, but as we all know, that those that pay attention to Judas, right, the game was actually supposed to come out by March of this past year. That was on also their investor reports in the past, where it says like, hey, upcoming games are coming out quarter blank, whatever, quarter, and Judas was on there. And then eventually they took it off. So at some point, they did think Judas was coming out by March of 2025. And then right around that time, they took it off that list. So him saying it is definitely a good sign. To me, it means, hey, because again, it was supposed to come out just a few months ago, so it got like a year delay. It's not like it's got 5-year delay. And honestly, we just brought up Bioshock, something maybe similar to that, where it's like, Bioshock's having these issues because of what they just did to Bioshock. We don't really know if this is like Bioshock, what? Would it have come out in 2027, 2028? Okay, now that they just did what they did with the story, right? Does that delay it 2 more years? So are we looking at like freaking 2029 or something, all right? So when it comes to Judas, you could say similar things, right? When you delay it or when it disappears off the release schedule, does that mean it's disappearing for 2-3 years, like something's majorly wrong? Or does it just mean it's like a half a year or a year? Seems like it's that, right? Seems like maybe they just delayed it a year or so. So that's what I'm choosing to believe. And by the way, a year next year where GTA 6 and Judas comes out, different games, I would even argue sometimes different audiences. What Judas is trying to do, I feel like, is going to be really special. Judas, I've said for a long time, can be a Game of the Year contender easily. Now, if it comes out same year as GTA 6, that'll be tough. But also just from Take-Two, pretty good year. And that's kind of in line with what he said. Borderlands will sell. A lot of these games are going to sell. But for my own personal excitement, to have GTA and Judas maybe in the same quarter, like same 3-4 month range, would be freaking awesome. So let me know what you guys think in the comments. Make sure, as always, you're subscribed to the channel, bell icon turned on, and I hope to see you all on the next one.